Thematic Synthesis Project. Although we may try and resist, we can't help but follow in what others are doing to fit in. Our decisions are based off what we encounter every day, to who we hang out with, to who we follow on social media. Although individuality is thrown around and most people want to be different, everyone makes their decisions to be like everyone else in our culture and society, no matter what the time period is. For example, during the late 1800s, Mark Twain wrote a story expressing the inner moral compass of Huck Finn, who sees that the people in the South treat Jim incorrectly because he's a slave. Even though he recognizes this, he still externally considers Jim a white man on the inside, saying, I knowed he was white inside, and I reckoned he'd say what he did say, so it was alright now. And I told Tom I was going for a doctor. Huck says Jim is white inside because he is surrounded by whites owning slaves, and growing up, he was told that whites were superior and that white people owning blacks was the way it should be. Huck is shaped by his town and his society in the South because that is who he interacts with every day. Jim is frowned upon by his society. Huck is constantly complaining about how he wants to be free and live his life separate from civilized culture, and this is because Huck realizes what society is really doing to blacks during the time. It's immoral, and internally, Huck wants to be in a place where he knows society doesn't undervalue a group of people. So Huck being surrounded by his racist culture shaped his decisions to try and be free. And because he knew if he stayed in the South, his morals would end up like every other person who wanted to think that blacks were less than human. Shifted during the 1990s when child warfare was occurring in Africa. Ishmael Bea describes his culture during his time as a child soldier as sometimes we were asked to leave for war in the middle of a movie. We would come back hours later after killing many people and continue the movie as if we had just returned from intermission. We were always either on the front lines, watching a war movie, or doing drugs. There was no time to be alone or to think. In A Long Way Gone, Ishmael is surrounded by everyone smoking brown and watching violent movies, so his culture directly impacts his decision to do the same. The goal in Africa at the time was to make every child soldier an immoral killer who disregarded human life and showed no mercy no matter who they were up against. And because of that culture that surrounded Ishmael, he became who he didn't want to be, a killer. This is a perfect example of peer pressure in a terrible situation. Everyone was doing it, so he did it. Culture and atmosphere shaping decisions is also true during the 1960s in Salem, Massachusetts, when the Salem witch trials take place. In The Crucible by Arthur Miller, Abigail Williams creates an environment that forces the girls that were caught dancing to do what she wanted. And the girls obeyed. They didn't have to. If more than one of them would have stood up and said they weren't possessed before things got out of hand, many people's lives in the town would have been saved. This isn't what the girls wanted to do, but thanks to Abigail and the culture she brilliantly created, she ended up getting in part what she wanted. In the play, Abigail Williams says, Shut up, all of you. We danced, that is all, and mark this, if anyone breathe a word or the edge of a word about the other things, I will come to you in the black of some terrible night, and I will bring with me a pointy reckoning that will shudder you, and you know I can do it. This quote shows Abigail and the demonstrative power hungry culture she created for herself to make the girls act possessed, and that definitely impacted their decisions to act with one another instead of to do the right thing and tell the judges of the town the truth. They could have done the right thing and tell the judge that Abigail had blackmailed them, but because it was easier and Abigail was constantly creating a hostile, possessive atmosphere, the girls made decisions that they shouldn't have made, and it ended up costing them and many others at the town. The 1950s also caused legal and moral decisions to be made based on society and the culture at the time. During the hunt for communists in America, Joseph McCarthy and the HUAC trial turned society upside down and led to the falsely accused and innocent being indicted. Joseph McCarthy even had a word created in his way of creating a culture to persuade people to act. McCarthyism is the practice of making accusations of subversion or treason without proper regard for evidence. This is like creating an environment where people are scared, and because of this, their decisions are changed. When McCarthy waved around a list of 205 names of supposed communists in the State Department, Americans became frantic to identify and remove communists from positions of power. This shows how all it took was one speech to create an entire environment of supposed communist chaos, and everyone's decisions were made during the time to remove them. All because of one man, everyone is changed. Although many times the environment that surrounds you isn't a good one and it shapes your decisions in a brash or bad way, like in The Crucible, McCarthyism, and the HUAC trial, and also A Long Way Gone, your environment can also lead you to make decisions or choices that make you who you are today. Generally, our culture and society today pushes us to shape our decisions to conform, although some have used their environment and upbringing to do the opposite. For example, J.J. Abrams has made the most of his upbringing in culture and society today. Growing up in a showbiz family, his parents, Gerald and Carol Abrams, were both producers. Abrams got a taste of Hollywood at a young age, hanging around Paramount Studios. Abrams says, "I'll never forget seeing Ron Howard, Henry Winkler, Tom Bosley, and the whole cast of Happy Days with their scripts and Gary Marshall on the floor rehearsing an episode. I felt a desperate, deep hunger to be on the floor with them." His hunger to be with them propelled and motivated him to be one of the most sought after directors on the planet and one of the most respected and successful people in the film industry. So, his culture shaped his decisions in a positive way and made it easier for him to get a foot in the door in the film industry and become who he is today. Our society shapes our decisions every day, whether it be from social media and what the cool people are doing to who we hang out with, makes us who we are. Our decisions with what we surround ourselves with ultimately sets us up for decisions we are going to make in the future. That's why who we hang out with generally imitates what we are like. The decisions they choose to make really do impact how we act. And although we may try and resist, we can't help but follow in what others are doing to